About a nice round of applause for our director, Kristen Lappas, and producer, Jay Williams. It's quite a privilege to have two Westport residents leading the charge with this remarkable film. I gotta say, guys, and you know, we're gonna have some time to take questions from you guys as well. He seems too good to be true. I mean, is there anything? I mean, you spent a lot of time with him. You both know him really well, and I'm not looking for dirt or anything, but just like any character flaws. Is there anything, Kristen? You were like, oh God, this guy.
So glad this question is being directed to you first.
Come on, Kristen.
I mean, it took a lot of convincing to let us in and do this.
That's the flaw. That's the best you got.
I don't know. He takes time to warm up, right? He doesn't let a lot of people in.
Okay. He's selective.
He's very private, honestly. Like you see the the Instagram and the kind of the persona that he throws out there, which is like the funny guy, right? The outgoing guy, but he really has like a very small inner circle that he trusts, and it took time to really be able to sit down and do these interviews. For example, like we didn't sit down to do the interviews with him until 9 months in.
9 months in? What were you doing for 9 months?
We were shooting some of the scenes you saw. We were trying to, ease our way in.
Yeah, there were a lot of trips to Greece, weren't there?
There were 5.
Yeah, there were 5?
Yeah.
I've never got 5 trips overseas for a show. I got to work with Connor and Jay. My goodness. Did you see your entire extended family, Kristen, on these?
I did. I actually hired a few cousins. They were our translators. Yep.
Wait, you didn't need it. You speak Greek, don't you?
I do not, unfortunately.
Jay, this question is now directed to you. Character flaws. Anything about Giannis, your business partner?
I think there's just always, there's a lot of moving parts, and I think as normal as he is, he's very abnormal. And I think when you're very abnormal in today's construct of the world, but also, I've seen this most of my life. Like, where can Giannis really go and be normal? Like, there's going to be somebody that's going to want to talk to him about something, a game that he played in. So I think the moments that he's had with his family, with his upbringing, they're so private. And I think sometimes to allow yourself to go to, look, I've known her forever. Her father recruited me at Villanova.
Unsuccessful.
Okay? Yes. Well, Duke came into the picture and things changed.
Sore subject in my house.
But she is...
Villanova was like an hour from where you live.
Very
but
true,
yeah. Okay.
It was Coach K. What do you want me to say?
I understand.
And, but she's very intuitive, and her ability to see things and ask questions, I think there's a level of intimacy there that you have to be ready to engage in when you start talking about your pain, your struggle, your success, and what that means in overall picture of your life.
So why did he want to do this at this point then? If he is someone who is so private, he doesn't need this out there. He certainly doesn't need, whatever the production fee might be. So what's the motivation?
I think I learned this with my own journey. I think sometimes it's about everybody has an interpretation of what you're going through. And look, I work in the vortex of sports media like you. I think we live in a world now where you watch Instagram, you watch TV all the time, and with the course of your day, it's really hard to do a deep dive into who somebody is. You're taking that information externally and then making it internal. And I think to give you a true depiction of what his journey was like and where he came from, I don't know, it's just like, this is a great country, right? And you see the differences. I mean, everybody has their issues, but you see how improbable his journey has been to being a NBA champion, a 2-time MVP, and being a father and while losing his dad. And also, look, the moment that really got me was during the pandemic with the Jacob Blake situation in Wisconsin. Like, I watched a young man in Milwaukee playing for the Bucks really struggle with this identity, right? Well, I'm Nigerian, but I'm really Greek. I'm Greek, but I'm really American. But also, what does that mean to be a Black American in this world, in this country, and how it's so different? And that's the first time I caught the way he spoke, the way he thought about it. It was just intriguing. He's one of the most complex, interesting, amazing people I've ever met.
As someone of Greek extraction, Kristen, I think on both sides, right? What was it like for you to hear about his experiences, his families as immigrants from Nigeria in Greece?
Yeah, like going in and having done all the research, it was really important to me that we explored that complicated relationship that he has with the country of Greece. It was something that I didn't know if he was going to go there on, honestly, just because he hadn't in the past. It was something that was very private to him and his family. They still have a home there that they go back to. And so, you know, he doesn't want to alienate people, but at the same time, like, they experienced all of these terrible things. And, you know, he does feel like he needs to represent the immigrant community there. So I think he was just ready to tell that story. And I just found it really fascinating. And to Jay's point, like, identity and like a sense of place in the world was something that was really important to us to get across in terms of a theme. And so, as you know, as hard as it is, and he says this, like, it was not everybody in Greece, of course, but it is complicated because he goes back and he plays for the Greek national team, and some of the fans that come to those games and dress their kids in his jerseys were at one point, you know, unaccepting of him and his family.
Have people in Greece seen this yet? Is it available?
It is available, and there have been some premieres there as well. But yeah, Amazon is available there. So
when are you? Have you been to any of the premieres? You walked the red carpet. I mean,
She's
there's
at
gotta be
every
a
one.
sixth
don't tell my
right?
husband that because he'll have to stay with our daughter. So
So I mean, how are people responding to it there? What do you know about that?
you know, I don't want to speak on anyone's behalf. I think that there are a lot of people there now that have become more progressive, and they are, you know, okay with us going there. And there are other people who feel like we shouldn't have. But we, again, with the company that I work for, the people that I work for, they did OJ Made in America. Like, journalism and like journalistic integrity and authenticity is really important to us. And so even if it is a hard topic, we weren't going to like not talk about it, if that makes sense.
Right, and of course, immigration is one of the topics of discussion in our political culture right now. It's one of the topics driving the presidential campaign here in 2024. And so there's a message clearly in this film about immigration. He's talking about his experiences in Greece. How do you think it applies to the national dialogue we're having here, Jay?
Wow. Okay, Jeremy, we're going there.
I mean, how can
It's
you
a great
not?
No, it's a great question. I think I can answer that for how our production and creative team think about it. I think discourse is supposed to be uncomfortable. And I think one of the beautiful parts about the film that Kristen and, Word and Pick and us, we were able to kind of put together is it is complex, it is nuanced, but I think having civil discourse and being respectable in the way you present your case is something that's kind of been lost over the last several years in a big way. And I think the complexities of this film allow you to dive into the details of those things, but also see the fact about he still wants to represent his country, and it's so meaningful for him. Like, one of my best friends is Greek, and we talk about a little bit of the complexity all the time. And he texted me after he watched the film, and he was just like, "Thank you for representing our growth." Like, there's growth that we all have in a lot of different places, and I think this taps into where we can be. And that's what this is. It's an aspirational film. I mean, he's still striving for different forms of success, even though he's so successful, because he wants to be the best version of himself. It's a rete, honestly. It's like, trying to find the full version of yourself.
And look, in sports, I mean, it's always been one of the narratives, especially here in the United States, about assimilation and immigration and the role that sports could play in that, whether it was at the turn of the 20th century when you were talking about all the great Irish-American baseball players and fighters, and subsequently, Jewish boxers and all of the great Italian-American baseball players, especially Joe DiMaggio, the role that sports has played in, people coming here from other parts of the world, and through sports and through their success in sports, finding a path into our society. And that's this story too, isn't it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Jeremy, when you asked why does he want to do this now, like, he's still obviously an active NBA player. It's not common for somebody that's still playing to want to share their story. I mean, usually they wait till they retire. But I think the thing that sold him, that made him want to do this, was the fact that this was the immigrant story. This wasn't like his last dance. He can do that in 25 years when he retires. I tried to pitch that to him. I was like, this isn't a basketball movie. This is a movie about your family. And I think that was kind of like, well, okay, I can, I'm 10 years into my career. I want to play 20. I'm at the halfway mark now. And it's such an amazing moment to stop and reflect on the first chapter.
I mean, he clearly is, and this is not, not to be cute because he's Greek, a philosophical type of guy. And he's achieved so much. He's, inarguably one of the 2 or 3 greatest basketball players in the world. Everyone on the planet who follows sports knows who he is. But, in some ways, in sports, that isn't always enough. People want to achieve more. They want to have a bigger legacy. They want to make a bigger impact. They want to use their platforms in sports to create some kind of legacy. What does Giannis want?
So I've been waiting to address this with you because I heard you're with our CEO, John Stern, and you guys made quick mention of it. So I had to go. I love Caitlin Clark. She is phenomenal. She is great at what she does. And it's funny, like being on air and talking about sports. The world I come from is a different world. It's, first off, like I was the 2nd pick in the draft. Like that's a great accomplishment. Like you realize when you're one of 5,000 players to ever play in a venue, in a group, that's special. And then to be a 2nd pick in the draft, you realize how difficult it is. But if I just were a normal person, I was like, well, that's enough. I'm not. Like, I want to be the best of the best. Now, I didn't get a chance to accomplish that because I got hurt and I had a life-altering incident that shaped my life for better ultimately. But that's the world we live in all the time, where you're not, I don't chase, I just want to be better. And my own journey is my own chase with myself. And I think Giannis is a person that epitomizes that. It's like when you see Kobe, you see Michael Jordan, you see LeBron James, everybody's like, well, what's next? And you're like, whatever's in front of me. And I think for Giannis, that's the journey he's on. And a lot of people can't really understand it. You can't describe it. It's like, him not winning the NBA championship when we showed, and he's talking about the steps. Yeah, he believes that, but also he's extremely pissed off that they lost. Like they were 3-7 with Doc Rivers this year. He's angry about that. So you start living in these moments where you try to be better each and every day, and it consumes you. And that's the beautiful part about it. I understand that as a former player. And so to help other people kind of understand that is also part of why I wanted this with Kristen.
So, Kristen, you're deep into this process. You've been shooting it for at least a year. By the time he makes those statements, when they lose in the first round, which was, one of those, cyclones in the sports talk universe for a few days. What does he mean? Does he care about sports anymore? Where's the fire? Why? He seems to be, suggesting that,
Skip Bayless, he's not an alpha male.
Right. Success doesn't mean anything to him after winning a championship, all that baloney. But, when you see that as the director of this film, in the process, you were probably already in edit with Matt at that point. Like, what did you think? Where did you think that was going to fit into the story?
Yeah, I mean, again, because we were doing this in real time, right? We filmed with him for 2 years at the height, arguably, of his career. And so the film was constantly evolving and changing. It wasn't like we set out this outline on the first day and we followed it by, beat by beat. But I mean, when I saw him say that, like, you can't watch this movie and then see that press conference and tell me that he didn't mean that and it wasn't genuine. And I knew that based on the conversations we had at that point. We had sat down for 2-3 hour interviews at that point. And so for me, it was so on brand and so in theme with everything else that we were putting together that I was like, this just makes sense. And it just kind of, yeah.
The main interview, there are the two. There's the one where he's in that confined space, and then there's that vast space that looks like the Oculus. What was that about?
It was amazing. It was amazing.
The larger atmosphere.
Well, both the contrast.
Yeah. So the contrast, we did the bigger, broader environment first. That's the Milwaukee Museum of Art. I felt like it kind of represented how big he has gotten in the world, right? He's like this larger than life character. He's 6'11", and the space just kind of fit him. It's just so epic, and he's so epic. There's not a lot of people that can pull off an interview in that space. I think he's probably one of the only people. But the second time we interviewed him, we had known each other longer, and he invited us to his home, and he actually helped me pick that location. He was like, this is like this little trophy room I have, and it's where I keep all of my favorite photographs from my career, and I'd love to do it in this space. And we were like, this is so cool that the contrast is so stark, but he was so much more comfortable. I felt like in that second interview that it kind of matches the tone of what we talked about, so.
Jay, for you, as such an accomplished athlete and figure in the media now, when you see somebody like Giannis tell his story this way, what are the lessons you take away from it for your life?
My wife's sitting in the back, and Nikki, and she was like, see, you got to tell your story. This is what I'm talking about. I think sometimes when you get a chance to be around these individuals and you meet them, you recognize that they're just like everyday people. There's highs, there's lows, and they're on a journey, they're on a path, and it's not a straight line. But when I watch it, I think we've kind of witnessed the athlete empowerment. I think LeBron James has really been able to leverage that with Spring Hill. And I think now we're at a stage where athletes really want to kind of create instead of people hearing what the perception of me is, how do I participate in that and work with, I know something that we talked about is how for Giannis to be vulnerable, how for him everybody tells you how differentiated you are, how for him to talk about how normal he is too. So it kind of creates more of a relatability to who he is as a person. You get that in snippets, but you can't tell me when you don't walk away from this film, you feel like you know him. You feel like you understand aspects of him.
I think totally.
And you're proud of that, right? And I think now it's not gonna be every case for every athlete. There's a lot of different challenges around that. But I think when you see that and then how that can lead to a lens of, in the media world, how you can help others go down that path, I think that's what GA and I wanted to do.
It's also, interesting, Kristen, right? Because you've done so many powerful stories about great athletes, about unknown athletes and coaches, figures in sports, from, the obscure to the super famous. But he is one of those rare figures, right? This global figure where there has been no controversy really about him, right? There haven't been anything. So it's almost tougher in that respect, though, as a storyteller, right? Because where are the highs and they are, there's his personal story overcoming so much adversity, but he's never been someone who's gotten himself into trouble in any way, right? Who's even been really criticized beyond maybe that press conference.
He hasn't, but, when we went into this, I was looking for what the focus was going to be, because every great movie has a really defined focus. And when I heard him talk about his dad and I understood what that relationship and dynamic was, I was like, this is the movie. It's this story of this father who sacrificed everything for his son, and this pivotal moment in Giannis's life where his father passes away, and how that impacts him both as a man, a player. It's why he became a dad a lot younger than, he originally thought he might. It just really changed him. And I just felt like if every story point in this film related back to that relationship, that we were going to have something really strong, because everyone can relate to that, right? Like, if you're a son, if you're a father, if you're a parent, you can understand that dynamic.
I also feel, Jeremy, it's like, I don't know how you feel about when you watch docus on athletes, but now all of a sudden, like, I am geared to think about, okay, like, where is that moment? Like, where is the controversy? When is it going to happen? And then to actually see a story where you're like, wow, that captivated me for an hour plus, and there wasn't any controversy. Like, wow, like, I think it's the storytelling. I want to applaud her and her team.
Go ahead.
I think we should. It's she is a superstar in this world, and I think for a lot of people pre-programmed to look at stories that way, the fact that there wasn't a story, but how she took you on this journey proves how incredible the film was.
I agree, and I found it captivating. I think he's charming, and I haven't seen him like that really before, you know, just in snippets, and the way that the story unfolds, all the pathos. There's always that issue, though, right, Kristen? What can't fit in, what you can't get in there. And I'm sure everybody asks you this when you talk about the film, but what were the things that really killed you that you couldn't include?
I mean, there were a bunch, but I think it's all the basketball stuff. Like, this really isn't a basketball movie. You know, like there.
You wanted more basketball?
Some people criticize it and say there's not enough basketball.
It's enough basketball. I think it's enough.
We had some awesome scenes with him and his wife, him and his kids that, you know, it just didn't fit into that, you know, narrative arc. And you're trying to make a movie that's an hour and 40 minutes. And again, every single scene has to be in service of the story. I have a mentor who's a very established filmmaker, and he always says the dominoes have to keep falling or you're going to lose people. So, you know, every scene, every soundbite, everything has to be pushing the narrative forward. And if you stay still for any given moment too long, you're going to lose people. So I tried to keep that in the back of my head.
How much involvement did Giannis have? I mean, other than sitting for the interviews, how much did he care about what this story was going to be?
I think, I mean, everybody cares about the story. It's their legacy, ultimately, and how that legacy is going to be depicted. I think, you know, his team has done a phenomenal job. You know, Alex Ratsis, I have to give a lot of credit to him because it was, you know, 3.5, 4 years ago, I was talking to him about, you know, how do we do something bigger and how do we build a production creative services company, helping other athletes tell their stories. And, you know, he was already kind of talking to Connor and we all came together. I think also it proves it takes a village to pull something like this off. I can't tell you how many late night conversations we've had or how many times I'm calming her down or she's calming me down because we get frustrated throughout the process. But I think we all knew that if we can keep fighting through and keep getting him to trust, I think so much of this has to deal with trust for him. Like, and we had our first conversation. I was like, that's gonna take, he's gonna have to earn, you guys are gonna have to work on that. And she's gonna have to earn it. And I think she was so malleable in how she went about that song and dance with him about when to pry, when not to pry, especially for a guy who's never really opened up before. That's why I give her a lot of credit for it.
And Jeremy, I just want to say one other thing. So he had no, as a courtesy to the family, when you tell a story that's this personal, right? You go to show them the film before they see it, for example, at an all-star game premiere with 500 people in the audience, right? That wouldn't feel right to me. And so my boss and I flew to Milwaukee in November to share the movie with the family, the finished movie. And I was so nervous. I was terrified because you hope you get it right. You know what I mean? Like, that's all that really matters to me, is that the family thinks I get it right. And so in typical Antetokounmpo fashion, they like invited us into their home. They served us dinner. We had wine, and then we put the movie on.
More pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it Greek
And I'm
food?
literally sitting there like, no, it wasn't. But it started, and I didn't watch the screen at all. Like, I was just watching their faces, right? And hoping, and like, you see their laughter, you see them tearing up and ultimately like hugging one another. And at the end, for them to say like, you got it right. Like, there were no like editorial notes. And I think that it also speaks to him as like how smart he is. Like, audiences are really savvy right now. And I don't think like a PR puff piece is like really what he wanted to put out there. He wanted to put something out there that was real.
Yeah, that must have been a great moment to be there with them as they were experiencing it.
It was pretty cool. Yeah.
We got time for a few questions. I can't see anything. Oh, we've got a mic stand and we got a background over there. So anybody?
If anyone has any questions, please come to the microphone so that everyone can hear you.
Got blinding lights in our eyes. I mean, it's good.
Yeah, one question in the back.
Oh.
Yep, we need to bring you to the microphone.
Okay.
He looks comfortable, though. I don't know if he's moving.
This isn't really a question, and I hate to admit this, but I've been a Nets fan, And when Kevin Durant,
A Nets fan.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Next
know.
one, I'm one as well. I know your pain.
Oh my God.
and when Kevin Durant had his toe on that line, I was very, very upset. But given what happened subsequent to that, and watching this movie, I'm really glad the Bucks won.
It's very
Because
generous.
Giannis is the real deal.
Yes, he is.
I mean, he really is. And thank you very much for making the movie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If
Jeremy is moving to
Okay,
the microphone.
we have
Another
time for
Jeremy.
one question, and then we're going to have to wrap.
Just one more? Oh, okay. All right. Oh,
Oh, we have two. Okay, all right.
I was thinking through so much of the movie, what about the brother that was left in Nigeria? And, you know, it didn't really come out until the afternotes, which I'm sure, again, was probably difficult to add that sub-story. But anything you could add about him and how he reunited with the family would be really interesting to me.
Sure. Obviously, it was really hard for Giannis's mom to talk about that. It was the most painful thing in her life. And, you know, Giannis told a story that didn't end up making the movie about how his mom used to go to payphones when he was little, and he just remembers her coming out of the payphone in tears and not really understanding like who he was calling or why. Ultimately, she felt like they were struggling so badly in Greece that it was the best situation for him to leave him with her mom and dad. And he had a really good life in Africa, but once Giannis became famous and had the money, the first thing he did was he flew his mom and dad back to reconnect with Francis, and then ultimately he moved to Greece, and they're all really close now, and he's a big part of Giannis's life, which is really cool.
does everybody have Greek passports now?
They do.
They
yes, yes.
Is he planning to become an American?
I don't know that answer. I don't know that answer. I know that when I asked him where he thinks about retiring, he says he wants to retire in Athens.
Oh, not Milwaukee. Jeremy.
Kristen, I have a laundry list we'll talk about later, but, you know, we are in the relationship business, and so I'm really curious, like, you know, when you're dealing with someone that famous that is in the moment playing, what was your approach, you know, going through, you know, there's always middlemen and things like that. How did you get to him, and what was your approach to build that rapport so you can ask those really, you know, those really personal questions?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, it took a lot of time. It took people like Jay and others that know him really well to help guide me through when to push and when not to, when to show up and when to give the family space and how to build that relationship. I think that capitalizing on he and his family's time during the off season was really important. Like, we didn't do much filming during the season because, again, I'm a coach's kid. Like, I know what that schedule's like, and I didn't think we were going to get a lot from him, honestly, when he was so focused on basketball. So hence the reason why we went to Greece so many times. Like, we shot a lot in the off season when he was in the right headspace to kind of go there. But one thing that really helped me was we actually interviewed his brothers, his mom, and his fiance before we interviewed him. And when I sat down with him, I had like a handful of clips pulled from his brothers' interviews. And so showing him his brothers talking about these really hard topics, I think allowed him to feel like, okay, I can go there because they're going there. Because they're all so connected that he felt comfortable after seeing that.
That's great.
It's a terrific film, and we appreciate our Westporters, Kristen and Jay, for spending time with us this evening.
Thanks,
Sir, Kristen, thanks, guys. Terrific film.